Welcome to This Week in Wrestling History.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It's episode 2 of This Week in Wrestling History. We're your hosts. I'm Ryan.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here to bring you the best in This Week in Wrestling History. So up for this week, we have the G1 Climax Finals for New Japan Pro Wrestling from 2016. We have Ring of Honor Punk, the final chapter, and WCW New Blood Rising.
This one will be interesting.
Yeah, let's preface this that the goal for this show is normally to keep it kind of PG-13-ish. We don't have any problems swearing, but unless it's really necessary, we're trying to kind of avoid an excessive amount. This week is going to be an excessive amount, as I do WCW New Blood Rising. It's bad. It's really bad. It's I have to swear a lot bad. I apologize in advance. If you're listening with your kids or anyone younger, just be really, really warned. When we get to the New Blood Rising section, there's going to be a lot of profanity.
It's one of those pay-per-views that if you don't use profanity to explain it, it's probably not going to get the point across at just how bad this thing actually is.
I feel like if I don't swear about this pay-per-view, my soul is going to die a little bit as I try to keep all of that inside. It's just not going to be healthy.
It won't be healthy for you at all. You're going to have to get that out.
Exactly. So, all right. So I guess that's about it for our introduction here. Anything else you got for this week?
You've been warned.
Exactly. All right. Let's hit it.
August 14th, 2016.
This is the G1 Climax for New Japan Pro Wrestling in 2016. For those of you that don't follow New Japan regularly, it's a round-robin style tournament. They take the top guys in the company and split them up into Block A and Block B. One wrestler in Block B faces everybody else in Block B, and you rack up points based on pinfall, submission, things like that.
2 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, 0 points for a loss.
Correct.
Okay.
At the end of the tournament, which usually runs about 18, 19 days, the winner of Block A faces the winner of Block B. The winner of that match then gets a shot at the New Japan IWGP heavyweight title at their Wrestle Kingdom show later on in the year.
And this is the newer structure because this is an old tournament, right?
Yes. The original tournament, the original block or setup for the tournament started back in the 70s. But as of right now, the way that it's formatted, it's been going on, I think, 23, 24 years.
Okay, so it's got some tradition to it. So the tournament in and of itself is even kind of prestigious just to win.
Yeah. You had people like the Great Muta winning it way back when, who up until, probably a couple years ago was still actually wrestling in it.
Right, and that's one of the cool things about the G1 is it's not just like the top guys in the company necessarily. You also get some mid-carders, and it's kind of almost like a Hall of Fame type thing for a couple guys even every now and then, just to kind of bring in an older guy, give him another run.
Yeah. Think of it like the Royal Rumble. You always get that one special surprise entrant that shows up every year. In this one, you get a special person that shows up, or occasionally somebody who you wouldn't necessarily think would be in there.
Gotcha.
But yeah, in 2016, this is the finals of the G1 tournament.
So the best of Block A, the winner of Block A from the winner of Block B.
Correct. Obviously, they have other matches going on because you can't fill a pay-per-view with just the one match. So the first match is Ryusuke Taguchi and Dave Finlay versus Jushin Liger and Tiger Mask 4.
Tiger Mask, a bit of a long-running character in New Japan.
Yep.
There's manga based off of him. He's what the Tekken character King is actually based off, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so
same thing with Jushin. Jushin was used. He's been around since
the 80s?
Mid 80s.
Yeah, I'm about to say. Pretty sure mid 80s, yeah.
And he's got public service announcement posters around Japan, and he's quite the pop culture
Right. I
icon
think this year
over
he
there.
just threw out like the first pitch of a big baseball game over there.
Yep.
So,
Exactly. He's a
well
pretty
known
big deal.
Well-known pop culture icon over there.
He's had a little bit of success in America. I mean, he wrestled for WCW for a while.
Yep.
He also wrestled for NXT a couple
He
years
did
ago.
have that one match against Tyler Breeze?
Yep.
All right.
Yep, at a takeover in Brooklyn.
Nice.
So, pretty standard match. I mean, you have a couple of older guys versus some relatively young guys. Dave Finlay being the son of Fit Finlay.
All right.
Go figure that Jushin and Tiger Mask actually go over in this one, and they're the ones that pick up the win.
Surprise to everyone.
It wasn't anything too crazy. There wasn't any crazy spots or anything, and they didn't give them a whole lot of time. It was about a
your
5-minute
basic
match.
kind of opening match between some more established guys and some younger up-and-comers.
Yep, exactly.
All right.
Second match you have is Gedo and Jado versus Yoshitatsu and Captain New Japan.
Captain New Japan. Okay.
Yeah. He's exactly what you would think. A ripoff of Captain America, but in New Japan
branding.
colors. Yep.
New Japan has... These days, it's mostly straight up, like, not too gimmicky things, but every once in a while, you got, like, Captain New Japan.
One will show up, and it makes you cringe every now and then.
Yeah, but Gedo and Jado have a history in Japan. They're a long-running tag team.
They're a long-running tag team, and Gedo is actually the booker for New Japan
Yeah, he's the
right
head
now.
booker, so he's kind of the guy that's running the show there.
They've been tag teaming with each other since, I believe I read it was 92 or 93.
About the early 90s from
Yeah.
Best End, because I know they were in WAR.
Yep.
I think they've shown up in WCW in the past for a match or two.
They had 2 matches in WCW
Yeah,
way back
so-
when.
All right.
And you have Yoshitatsu, who had a short run in WWE, was actually on his way to get a push, and then broke his neck.
Oh, he was the one that made the Styles Clash a no-no move for quite a while.
Yes. He broke his neck. I believe it wasn't in New Japan.
Wasn't it? I thought it was.
It might have been against AJ Styles in New Japan, but I know that he had some issues with AJ outside of New Japan.
Okay, so it may have been in a different thing, but
yeah.
I know it's definitely been referenced in New Japan, and I know that injury was what was responsible for getting the Styles Clash banned in the WWE until Jericho actually slyly got it reinstated, because
Yep.
he was the one that told Vince, hey, when AJ came in and they were having their thing, hey, he's got this great finisher. Is that cool if we use it? Without saying the name Styles Clash.
Yeah.
Vince...
Jericho called it like a how did he put it? An inverted pile driver or something,
like an inverted tombstone or
he
something?
called
Yeah.
it something really weird, and Vince was like, yeah, that sounds great, let's do it.
All right, God, do it.
So he was banned for quite a while. Tatsu was actually out for a very long time with
Right.
that.
They had him on. They had him doing announcing, and if you go online and you can find YouTube clips of him not being a great announcer.
Oh yeah, he was horrible at it.
Yeah.
Again, standard tag match. That's one thing that you guys will notice with New Japan. They have a lot of tag matches because the way that they're set up is everybody in New Japan belongs to some kind of stable. There's Chaos, there's the Bullet Club, there's
Suzuki Goon.
Yep.
There's LIJ.
yeah, everybody belongs to some kind of
Major
faction.
faction. Yeah.
So a lot of times you'll have factions who are feuding with each other, and random pairings inside of said factions will face each other. So there's a lot of tag matches on New Japan's cards.
Which kind of helps offset things like the G1, where you're doing, a dozen singles matches within a week or within about 2 or 3 weeks of each
Yeah.
other. So to balance that out, you also have a lot of tag matches, which lets guys go a little bit easier on themselves.
And it's also, New Japan's done a really good job with it because when you have pay-per-views like this, it also gets more people a payday.
Sure.
Gets more people on the card, gets their face out there, that kind of thing.
It keeps giving guys something to do without having to kill themselves every single night.
Yep. So, nothing super crazy. Jado ended up putting Captain New Japan in a crossface, and Yoshitatsu wasn't around, so he tapped, and Yoshi actually ended up leaving the ring and left Captain New Japan high and dry. So Gedo and Jado end up going over.
All right.
Short match. I think it was under 6 minutes.
But, I mean, fits the bill for what it needed to be again.
Yeah. Get some guys out there. That's what their goal was for this. Next up, you have Togi Makabe and Tomoaki Hanma versus Chaos, which this team consisted of Tomohiro Ishii and Yoshihashi.
So Ishii and Yoshihashi, which if no one has seen Ishii, he's worth checking out because he is a big dude, but he's agile and he's really fun to watch because he's a power guy that that doesn't fight like your typical power guy.
No, you would expect somebody like him to be doing the scoop slams and the presses and things like that.
Yeah, just much slower of a pace than he actually does.
This guy goes 0 to 60 at the start of the match and does not let off the gas until the end.
And also, if you ever want to see a human being with no neck, a great specimen of that.
Oh, yeah. It goes from shoulders directly to his head.
Yep.
He's also one of the stiffest workers in New Japan. And again, we're throwing around a lot of terminology.
Yeah.
Stiff workers, he hits pretty hard and doesn't really care.
Hard, can take a good shot right back. So, I mean, he kind of exemplifies what's known as the strong style of Japan, where it's big, impactful move. The criticism being you see guys get dropped on their head a lot, head, neck, upper shoulder at best some days. He kind of exemplifies that style. So if you ever want to see a good example of the New Japan strong style, he's your guy.
Guaranteed you'll cringe at least once in some of his matches where you think, he might have just died.
Yeah, it's like, I hope that guy can walk tomorrow.
Yeah. Ishii and Yoshihashi end up going over. Short match, and Hanma was actually really good without it, or throughout the match. And I wish they had let that one go on a little bit longer because of the fact that Hanma was actually really good in this.
Uh-huh.
Previously, he hadn't had a whole lot of matches. I don't think he's had some really good ones since, but
so
I wish we had seen a little bit more of him.
Fair.
Next, you have Team Noah, which is another promotion in Japan.
And that's something we'll see in Japan a lot more often than anything you see in the States. Their working relationship is a lot better. Typically, you'll see a lot of bounce around between New Japan, All Japan, and Pro Wrestling Noah being the big three.
Yep, especially because the way that they're thinking things are going to go is that if you don't have somebody signed to your company, you can still have a good relationship with them because they're trying to put the business over anything else.
Gotcha.
So Team Noah consists of Katsuhiko Nakajima, Go Shiozaki, Maybach Taniguchi, and Masa Kitayama. Mouthful for that team. And then you have Team New Japan, which at the time had Katsuri Shibata as the openweight champion at the time, Hiroshi Tenzin, Yuji Nagata, and Manabu Nakanashi.
So we know Shibata, unfortunately, would suffer a likely career-ending injury not too long after.
Yeah, he came back and said he wants to wrestle again, but I don't think that's going to happen from the severity of his injury.
A good example would be to kind of call him the New Japan version of Daniel Bryan, where except the injury's a lot more clear cut. I would recommend not actually watching the injury. So Shibata is another guy that's known for working, quote unquote, the strong style, a lot of real hard, impactful looking stuff. He got into a headbutting contest with, I don't know if it was Suzuki or Ishii.
It was Ishii.
And ended up giving himself a subdural hematoma.
Which, for those of you that don't know, his brain
It's a brain bleed.
Yeah, his brain started bleeding because he was hitting his head so hard against somebody else's head.
Yeah, I mean...
It was also to the point where he cracked skulls with Ishii and actually started bleeding from his forehead.
Yeah, it was...
Almost immediately.
It's one of those impacts, too, where it's literally a sickening thud. You really don't want to...
Yeah.
Like I said, it's out there. You can watch it. I recommend not because it's just kind of nauseating.
Especially because after the matches, he goes to leave. Half of his body goes numb and he nearly falls over.
Right. I mean, you're literally seeing someone get traumatic brain injuries.
Yeah. I thought that the guy was going to die after I was watching that.
And I'm pretty sure he went to the hospital was in a life-threatening, at least for a brief period of time.
They had him in critical condition for at least a week after that. So,
I mean, we're at the point where it's near miraculous that the guy's walking at this point in time, let alone contemplating wanting to get back in the ring.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
So, also on that team, you have Yuji Nagata.
Innovator of the Nagata Lock.
Who's been around for quite a long time.
Right. Another big name guy in Japanese wrestling history. He's been a New Japan champion. I'm pretty sure he's been an All Japan champ as well, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Had a run in WCW, I believe, for at least a brief period of time, too.
Yep. He's a big name wherever he ends up going.
Right.
So, surprisingly enough, Team Noah ends up going over in this. The biggest standout throughout this match was Shiozaki and Shibata. They had the most time out of anybody in the ring, and they destroyed each other.
Right, and I believe, actually, if you go listen to our previous episode, I think Go Shiozaki was in an RoH show we covered back then.
He was.
So, he gets around. Really good performer.
Yeah, the two of them going at it at times seemed like a legit fight. Like they were cracking each other pretty good throughout most of it, which is again Shibata's style. Yeah. Pretty good match. It told a really good story. Nothing terribly crazy. There wasn't any oh my gosh moments or anything like that.
Just a good solid match.
Yeah. Next up, you have the IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Champions, Jay and Mark Briscoe.
From RoH.
Correct.
Yep. So there's always been a good working relationship between New Japan and RoH, at least since the mid-aughts, early teens.
Yeah. So you'll see, surprisingly enough, you'll see guys who aren't contracted with New Japan, who are contracted with RoH, actually win their belts.
Right.
So it was Jay and Mark Briscoe versus the Bullet Club, which this time it consisted of Adam Hangman Page and Yujiro Takahashi.
All right.
Really good match. This was one of the ones out of the entire card that I did manage to watch. It was really fun. The Briscoes with their kind of redneck gimmick.
Yeah, they're kind of like... They're not grungy, almost kind of like Raven's Flock back in the day. Kind of just like dirty, grungy guys that just fight and go.
Yeah. Their gimmick mixed with Hangman's kind of cowboy. Mm-hmm. And then you throw Yujiro's pimp gimmick into the whole thing. It was just fun watching them interact with each other.
Nice.
Jay and Mark Briscoe retain the tag titles. Like I said, I had fun watching it. There was a lot of criticism with it because it just didn't seem like it was good with the spots or anything like that. Yeah. So I thought it was good. Could have gone a little bit shorter, but overall it was a great fun match. Next up you have the ROH World Champion, Jay Lethal, versus Satoshi Kojima with Tenzin in his corner. And this was for the ROH
So
title.
ROH belt being defended on a New Japan show.
Yep. Didn't really watch this one. I'm not a terrible fan of Jay Lethal.
He's never done much for me either. He's fine.
Yeah.
Probably better than fine for most people, but
The only time I really had any fun watching him was when he did his Black Machismo, where he was essentially Macho Man.
yeah, about
In
that. He was like
TNA.
80s Macho Man
Yeah.
in 2000s ROH or
And
TNA.
when he had a run as being a knockoff Ric Flair also. That was really the only time I've ever actually liked watching him wrestle. But Lethal retains. There wasn't really a spark in this match.
Yeah, just
So,
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
yeah. So next up you have the IWGP Intercontinental Champion and the CMLL Liga Elite World Champion. So double champ, Michael Elgin,
All right.
and Hiroshi Tanahashi. Also with the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion, Kushida and Juice Robinson,
So 4-person tag match?
Yep.
Okay.
versus LIJ, which this team consisted of Naito, Evil, Bushi, and Sonata.
LIJ, for those not familiar with it, and so bear with me here. It's a Japanese name said in Spanish. It's Los Ignorables de Japón.
Yep.
All right.
So, I mean, on one side you have Michael Elgin, who's built like a Mack truck, and he's a really solid worker.
Big, solid Canadian guy, former ROH world champ.
Yep. You have Hiroshi Tanahashi, who is essentially New Japan's John Cena.
Yup. So he's kind of like the guy that was carrying the company on his back for a long time, now starting to transition to a lower spot on the card, but still a big name, still heavily featured.
Yep, exactly. And again, he's another one of those that he'll go out and he's been doing modeling stuff in Japan. He does everything over
Gotcha.
there. And then you have Juice Robinson along with Kushida. Juice Robinson is actually currently the IWGP United States champion.
So we have a team with a lot of gold on it.
Yeah. Naito, Bushi, Sonata, and Evil end up taking this one. So LIJ wins. After Naito ends up kicking Elgin out of the ring, steals his belts and kind of taunts Elgin as he chases him around.
So yeah, this would end up becoming, or at least was part of, a big lead up to Naito getting the Intercontinental Championship. And for those unfamiliar, Naito is an extremely good wrestler, very charismatic as well, as a lot of the top New Japan guys are. A lot of people feel like he should have been the next quote-unquote ace of New Japan. At some point, we'll probably go over what the term ace means, but not right this moment. He was kind of to be the next chosen one, but it kind of went to Okada instead, and it kind of really put a chip on Naito's shoulder, which honestly kind of has worked for him since.
Yeah, since he's kind of lost that top spot to take over essentially as Tanahashi's replacement, he's been doing really good work. If you want to see a solid match, you watch Naito versus Kenny Omega anytime they wrestle.
Yeah.
Or Naito versus Chris Jericho for the Intercontinental belt.
Yeah, I mean, Naito is just super solid, strong worker. Again, I'm not sure if there's a great reference or a great parallel to anyone in WWE. Again, maybe kind of like your Daniel Bryan, who was kind of like the crowd was behind him to be the next chosen one, but
The company didn't want to.
yeah, the company
Pull the
wasn't really
trigger.
behind it, and so for one reason or another, never really materialized, but is still very close to the top of the card, still fighting away really strong.
Yep. So yeah, Evil ends up pinning Robinson for the win after they all got kind of distracted with Naito stealing Elgin's belts and kind of running around with them, and it got a little crazy. There was a breakdown in the whole officiating, keeping people on the outside thing. So kind of your typical end for a big team match.
Gotcha. And yeah, New Japan's always been a little bit more lenient in the tag area where like it's almost more of a tornado tag at any given time.
They still go through and do the tags and everything
but
like that.
Sometimes if multiple people get involved, these sorts of things happen.
Yep. So after that, you end up having Chaos, which at the time had Okada as the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. Toru Yano and Naomichi Marufuji, which again we had talked about him on the last episode.
Yep, he was in the ROH match against Joe Shiozaki.
Versus the Bullet Club. Bad Luck Fale, Tama Tonga, and Tongaloa in a 6-man match.
So that version of the Bullet Club now currently known as the Firing Squad with that whole thing.
So they end up, as a quick rundown for people who might not know, and it's going to be a year before we talk about it, there's a fracture in the Bullet Club right now. Those 3 guys plus Haku end up going after the rest of the Bullet Club, and they've splintered themselves off as the Firing Squad. So, I mean, really the only question is, what the hell is Haku's problem?
Seriously.
For those of you that don't know, go watch Being the Elite. It's a funny moment with Cody Rhodes. So, after that, the Tongans come out and they try to run roughshod, but Okada being the top guy,
top guy in the company,
the chosen one, they kind of squash it real quick. Ended up being a little bit of a longer match. Okada ended up winning with Yano and Marufuji. Okada went to go shake Marufuji's hand afterwards because they had a little bit of some run-ins.
Mm-hmm.
Okada went to go offer his hand. Marufuji went to go take his hand back. Okada pulled the real slick sliding his hand
Slick
through
your
his
hair back,
Yep. And grabbed the title, walked right by Marufuji and posed with it for the crowd. Good match. Not a whole lot of story to it other than the stuff with Marufuji, but obviously Okada was one of the best in that match. All right. So now we have the main event, which is the Block A winner, Hiroki Goto, versus the Block B winner, Kenny Omega, in the finals of the G1 Classic.
All right.
So this match would kind of propel Kenny Omega to where he is now.
Kenny Omega was originally a junior heavyweight, which in the U.S. they would be your light heavyweights or your cruisers, your 205 livers. But he had been making a run at becoming a heavyweight, and this was kind of what finally cemented him as not just a heavyweight, but a main event guy.
Yeah, this was kind of the cap to his Cinderella story of getting into the heavyweight division. Great match. Probably one of the best I've ever seen. But not Kenny Omega's best.
Which, fair. Guy puts on, as it's now known, the 7-star match machine or something of that nature.
So, him and Goto end up going for almost an hour just on this part of the card alone. So at this point, it had been a really, really long card.
So New Japan cards tend to run a little bit longer because they actually do like a full-blown intermission in the middle of things.
Yep. Like I said, great match. Kenny ends up winning and becoming the first Gaijin to win the G1 Climax, which for those of you that don't know, that's anybody who's not... A Gaijin is anybody who's not born in Japan or
Gaijin
Japanese
basically being
descent.
Japanese for foreigner.
Right.
So first non-Japanese winner of the modern G1.
Yep. And it propels him into the main event scene. Being the leader of the Bullet Club kind of takes the rest of the Bullet Club into the main event scene with him.
Right. This is honestly what really kind of propelled the Bullet Club into being a cultural phenomenon, so to speak, is
Yeah.
Kenny kind of winning the G1 and really becoming a main eventer over in New Japan, because this would lead to his first match at Wrestle Kingdom with Okada.
First
And-
of 4.
Yeah, first of 4 matches with Okada. And just really kind of bringing New Japan into more relevance in the U.S. as well.
This definitely takes New Japan and puts them into the mainstream talk and puts a lot more comparisons of them with WWE.
Yeah, this is really what kind of starts putting them on the radar in the U.S. They were big in the 80s, big in the 90s. They had a rough period in the early 2000s where the owner of the company tried to mix wrestling and MMA too much, and it didn't work whatsoever.
Yeah.
They had a real dark period of almost the early 2000s in general, early to mid 2000s. And there was a resurgence. They had a lot of talent coming in, and they really started turning things around. And this is really what started putting them on the map internationally again.
Exactly. It was shortly after this that they started doing they announced they were going to do the G1 Climax Super Show in San Francisco, their first major show in the U.S. in, I think, ever.
Yeah.
It's when they announced the United States Heavyweight
Right, soon after
Championship.
they have the U.S. title, which had never existed before over there. And
Right.
so
It was the
really
first.
this was what kind of triggered that whole thing. So
Like I said, great match. Really fun to watch. If you need an intro to Kenny Omega before you see any of his really good stuff, this would be the match I would say to go for.
All right. So that's the G1 Climax Finals, New Japan, August 14th, 2016. All right. Deep breath, everyone. Here we go.
So before we start again, if you didn't hear the intro, if you're with children, do not let them listen to this part if you're sensitive to them hearing swear words.
Yep. I'm going to be as good as I can, but there's no way I can get through this without swearing a bunch. So, WCW New Blood Rising, August 13th, 2000. All right. So, this was the first pay-per-view after the Hulk Hogan, Jeff Jarrett, Vince Russo incident at the previous month's Bash at the Beach.
So for those of you that don't really know your WCW lore, I'm sure we'll get to it at some point.
Right,
but
yeah. But what happened was Hulk Hogan was still with the company. The NWO wasn't really a thing anymore. Vince Russo had come in to be the head writer. There was a kind of a changing of the guard between the previous WCW style of taking previously established talent and making them the main card versus growing their own newer talent. Vince Russo came in, was kind of done with the older guys, especially Hogan. There was supposed to be a title match between Jeff Jarrett and Hulk Hogan at Bash at the Beach. The plan was Hogan comes in, Jeff Jarrett just lays down in the middle of the ring, says he basically wants nothing more to do with this. Hogan gets the WCW title, and then they basically say, we're done with you, and bring out a new WCW championship for the new guard.
Yep.
This was supposed to be a work. This was all supposed to be scripted. Hogan was supposed to get upset at the whole thing, and then later down the line, Hogan would come back, and they'd have kind of a unification thing. What actually happens was Vince Russo, Jeff Jarrett take it further than Hogan expected, and there's lawsuits, and it becomes a mess. Anyways, the reason this is important is because now Vince Russo is just absolutely smitten with the idea of who knows what's real and what's just your standard pro wrestling suspension of disbelief.
Which during this time in the business, I'm not surprised that they started to go under after this.
Right. So, at this point, WCW was already, so Time Warner was looking to sell WCW at this point. They were already
There we
up
go.
for sale.
Yeah.
But Vince Russo just latches onto this. Everything you're looking at is a shoot. It's real. We don't know what's going on. but they do it so much. If everything's a shoot, then nothing's a shoot, because then it's just what your business is, and it's just so much. And we'll get to it. I'm just going to start this thing. I just got to jump in. All right. First match of the night was 3 count in a ladder match versus the Young Dragons. 3 count being the boy band gimmick consisting of Shannon Moore, Shane Helms, and Evan Courageous. Young Dragons were kind of 3 supposedly Asian wrestlers, kind of in their own group. It was Jamie-san, who was actually Jamie Noble, not Asian whatsoever, but in a mask.
Which, if you hear that man talk, he is the farthest thing from being...
He is the most stereotypical North Carolina guy you've ever heard.
Yep.
Kaz Hayashi, just good, solid worker. And Yun Yang, better known as Jimmy Wang Yang from SmackDown in the late 2000s.
Which he had a run, which is about all you can say.
Yeah, it was nothing to write a home about, no championship reigns or anything, but a decent worker. Like, fine mid-carder.
He put on good matches.
Yep. So starting the match out, so let me rewind. It was a ladder match for 2 things: for a recording contract for 3 count and for 3 counts gold record. And they weren't like 2 things held up above the ring together. They were 2 separate things. You had to go up the ladder twice to get them. This would become key later on. Also, Tank Abbott was smitten with 3 count and came out with them for some reason. Because, it's funny, Tank Abbott's a big UFC fighter and he likes this boy band.
No.
Okay. Anyways, match starts off 1-on-1, which, why you have 2 guys just starting out and then, or you have 2 guys in the ring starting and then their 2 tag partners out just sitting on the outside of the ring.
Which, if you don't know the rules of a tag team ladder match, it's a tornado tag.
Yeah,
which
everyone's all involved with the match at the same time.
Everybody goes all together all at the same time.
Yeah. They eventually figure this out that, hey, we should be doing something. And so everyone eventually spills to the outside. Stuff starts going at it, as a 6-person ladder match would. Because they're just going everywhere, the camera's missing out on most of the action at any given time.
I can't imagine what the camera cuts looked like for that.
So that was actually kind of the problem. There weren't camera cuts. It was one camera pointed at the middle of the ring the whole time when you had guys doing acai moonsaults to the outside, dives to the outside, just
good grief.
Bad editing. Or production, I should say. So yeah, as I said, there was 2 things. They had to go get a gold record and a recording contract. Why these 2 things were separate, I'll never know. Midway through the match, the crowd starts chanting "break his neck," which was
not cool.
No, and this was up in Canada, the quote-unquote the nice people in the North American area. Yeah, some guy was on a ladder, and one of the guys from, I think it was Shannon Moore, was laid out on a ladder. One of the Young Dragons was jumping off the top rope onto him, and they were chanting "break his neck." So it was just, my only thought there is that it was that much anti-boy band sentiment at that time.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of.
Either way, break his neck, not really called for. So again, my only other real note on this whole thing was it was too fast. If someone was climbing up the ladder, they'd be going a little too fast, just running up the ladder. If someone was stopping them, they'd just run over and shove the ladder right over. These are smaller guys, so they were cruisers, so normally we expect kind of a faster pace, but there was just never any tension built up. It was more just high spot, crash off a ladder.
Yeah.
So in the end, what happened was one of the guys from the Young Dragons climbed up and got the gold record, and then Tank Abbott took that away from him at some point a couple minutes later, and then someone from 3 count went and got the recording contract. I have
So
3 count wins?
I guess.
Sure. And then Tank Abbott runs off with both things? It makes no sense. So you had to get both things, but one of them, you climb up, you get one thing, and then fight over that one thing while still trying to climb up and get the other thing? I don't get it. I don't know. Thank you, WCW.
Awful. Just awful. Which is a shame because, I mean, Shane Helms is... A lot of those guys are decent workers.
In the match... A match between those 6 guys would have been good.
Yeah.
Adding in the dumb booking, the nonsensical gimmicks, and it breaks down into being awful.
Yeah, I mean, you have guys like Jamie Noble, who's, a producer now for
he's
WWE.
One of the road agents.
Shane Helms would go on to be Gregory Helms in WWE and had the longest reigning cruiserweight title.
Yeah, Kaz Hayashi, I'm pretty sure, went on to RoH or TNA at least and did...
I think he went to both.
I'm pretty sure he went to both and actually did a lot over in Japan as well.
Yeah.
So this guy had talent, just as per 2000s WCW, just completely wasted. All right.
Yeah.
Yep, there's match number 1 of 8 I think we need to get through for this whole thing. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 11. Fuck me. Next match was the Great Muta versus Ernest Miller, the Cat. Ernest Miller was the GM of WCW at the time, and his gimmick was of, 70s Jackie Chan or Bruce Lee. He was Karate Guy.
Oh, no.
So you have Karate Guy versus the Great Muta. This was my first part of the night where I actually noticed how many quote-unquote insider terms they were using. They've used the terms shoot interview, high spots, and legit heat.
Which are things that you should not be saying in your commentary if you want to keep the suspension of belief thing going.
Exactly. So... that was the first thing I noticed about this match. Second off, one of the announcers, Mark Madden, was just trying so desperately to be Bobby Heenan, but just failing at it miserably. And he's just awful. I'm pretty sure Mark Madden either was recruited from or went on to work for QVC or some home shopping network thing.
Yep, he was on QVC for quite a while, actually.
And he just has this awful, carny, huckster, desperate... You just can't believe anything coming out of the guy's mouth, and half the time it's just offensive.
And you don't want to listen to anything that comes out of the guy's mouth either.
He wasn't a heel announcer in the fact that, he's really getting under everyone's skin. He's putting the heels over. It was just, he's annoying the shit out of you the entire time, and you just want him to shut up and anyone else in the world to talk. All right. Last thing I noticed about this match was, so Ernest the Cat Miller, his big thing was he's Karate Guy, so he's throwing lots of kicks and stuff. But his balance is awful, and he's leaning over and then holding the top rope to throw a high kick. Which is just insulting when you have him against Muta.
Who is arguably one of the biggest names in Japan.
Right.
And the innovator of so many different moves and one of the most decorated champions in Japanese history.
Yeah. So you have pretend Karate Guy versus actual Asian athlete able to do martial arts.
Right.
Ernest the Cat Miller goes over with a stiff kick to Muta's face, and fuck WCW.
Boggles my mind that you waste somebody like Muta like that.
All right. Up next was possibly the first or second most infamous match in WCW history.
Uh-oh.
We have Judy Bagwell on a pole match. Of course, we don't have a pole big enough to fit Miss Bagwell on, so it becomes Judy Bagwell on a forklift match.
So, hang on. Let me get this straight. They strapped Buff Bagwell's mother to a forklift?
Yep. Zip tied her to a forklift.
What the fuck?
So this is coming on. So at the time, Vince Russo thought, fuck it, put everything on a pole. That'll make it good.
I mean, this is also coming from the guy who, and again, we'll probably cover this at some point, Viagra on a pole match.
That would be the other contender for the most infamous WCW match. Yep. So it was, I believe, a couple weeks previous was the Viagra on a pole match. Ugh. Now we have Judy Bagwell on a pole match. So, yeah, as my note on this says, Judy Bagwell on a forklift. Judy fucking Bagwell on a fork fucking lift. It's not even blank on a pole rules, by the way. It's just a normal match with some guy's mom hanging out on a forklift next to the ring.
Like, if you're going to do something like this at this point, why don't you just put her in a shark cage and hang her above the ring like WWE was doing at the time? Like, that would have made more sense.
Because we're on this path of not making any damn sense, David Arquette shows up. Former WCW heavyweight champion David Arquette shows up. Fuck WCW. You fucking awful. Fuck you.
So, again, we'll get to it at some point within the coming, year or so. David Arquette, the actor, was WCW World Heavyweight Champion for, I'm almost positive, for like 3-4 months or so.
For longer than any amount of time was longer than necessary, but...
And spoiler alert, he can't wrestle.
No, and I will not even fault David Arquette in this whole mess. He gets an undue amount of blame, but this guy was just a fan of wrestling, happened to also be a famous actor in a movie about wrestling, and Vince fucking Russo puts the belt on him. And this guy was like, that's probably not a good idea. And he's like, nah, we doing it.
Vince Russo, arguably, actually, no, not arguably, the worst writer, I think, in wrestling history.
The guy had a couple decent ideas after being filtered through Vince McMahon's brain.
Right.
So he could generate ideas, but he should not be left alone without a strong editor.
No.
Anyways.
He's like a small child.
I suppose I should actually mention who was in this match besides Buff Bagwell was Canyon, and Arquette comes out, screws up the finish, or screws up his interference, and the finish is Buff getting his mom back. Hooray. All right. Next was a 4-way tag match. We had the Misfits in action being Hugh Morris and Captain Cajun. I'll be honest, I don't know who Captain Cajun was.
Yeah, no idea.
Sorry. At the time, Hugh Morris was being known as General Rection.
Oh,
yep.
Boy.
We had Jindrak and O'Hare.
Okay.
They were fine and serviceable. Sean Stasiak and Chuck Palumbo.
Okay.
Fine. And Chronic, Brian Clark and Brian Adams. They were big. And the Filthy Animals were the refs. The Filthy Animals, for some reason, had the belts. I guess they probably stole them from Chronic. The Filthy Animals being Rey Mysterio Jr., Juventud Guerrera, Disco Inferno is an annoying tag-along. Conan, more of a managerial role than an actual in-ring competitor at this point, and Tigress is their valet.
Yeah, this was when Conan started to move away from in-ring competition,
Yeah, I think
right?
his injuries were starting to really build up on him from decades of wrestling in. Yeah. Huge ECW chant breaks out at the start of the match. 'Cause reasons.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. No one in the match seemed to give a shit about it.
I honestly don't give a shit listening to it.
Yeah. As it turns out, Conan is worse at announcing than Mark Madden was.
Shocker.
Because, again, they're going for like the Bobby Heel style heel announcer, but Conan's trying to do it while being the cool guy in the ring too, and just smacks of trying so hard and just too hard. All right.
So, real quick though, Rey Mysterio part of the Filthy Animals, correct?
Yes.
This was after he lost his mask, correct?
Oh, him and Hoovy both had lost their masks.
So was he going still as Rey Mysterio Jr., or was this when he was Oscar Gutierrez?
No. It was still Rey Mysterio Jr., but it was kind of more Ray and Hoovy.
Oh, okay.
So
Trying to be some like knockoff
Yeah.
cholos kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. Disco Inferno was the ref, and he was biased against everyone, which was completely dumb because the stipulation here was that the Filthy Animals had a title shot the next night on Raw against whoever the champs were.
Next night on...
Oh, sorry, on Nitro.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you kind of pick a team to be that you thought was the weakest link of the four and favor them?
Nope. Doesn't work like that.
No, we're just going to be biased against everyone and piss off everyone because, we're the cool guys. We're going to, like, they wanted to be DX, I think, is what they were going for. And, yeah. All right. Let's see.
Who ends up winning?
Chavo from Misfits in Action comes in and counts the pin for Chronic. So,
What?
one guy that wasn't at all part of the group of refs came in and counted the pin for another team because they were just done with the whole Misfits and clusterfuck. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what they were doing.
Awful.
Right.
And we're how many matches in?
That was 4.
This is one of those that if I had bought this on pay-per-view way back when, I probably would have called the cable company and demanded my money back.
You certainly would be in complete rights to do so. All right. Side note here. Chronic's gimmick was... there were 2 big dudes that were not good at wrestling that came out in like all black, looking just kind of like generic 2000s pseudo-goth, but kind of just tough guy-ish.
Right.
But their name is Chronic, and their finisher was a double chokeslam called High Times. Like... They got cheered because, pot humor.
Sounds about right.
Their gimmick made no sense. They did nothing to represent that gimmick other than have some stuff named in a certain way. Like, their big thing was they came out and smashed the shit out of guys. Yeah, that's your real laid-back stoner thing, right?
Right.
Anyways. Match 5. Shane Douglas and Billy versus Billy Kidman in a strap match, but it wasn't a normal touch the 4 corners in sequence strap match. It was just a regular match. These 2 guys just happened to be hooked with a strap.
Which is really upsetting because I would love to have seen Shane Douglas versus Kidman just as a regular match.
Yeah, these two guys are legitimately good at wrestling.
That would have been a great match.
Yeah. Kidman ends up winning. Again, so another note I had here, at some point in the commentary, they used the term turned heel.
Ugh.
Kidman wins. Shane Douglas does the post-match beatdown, and Big Vito makes the save, and then Reno comes in to chase off Vito because these were your 2 guys involved in the Viagra on a pole match.
So what did they have to do with this match? Other than a run-in?
WCW?
Oh, well, all right, I guess.
All right. Match number 6. Major Guns versus Miss Hancock, a.k.a. Stacy Keibler, in a ROTC match. ROTC match, so clearly we're referring to like a boot camp match, right?
You would think.
No, that clearly stands for Rip Off the Camouflage. It's just a glorified bra and panties match with Major Guns is a fine valet. We'll end that there. Stacy Keibler is a great athlete. She's not a good wrestler. Amazing dancer. Decent actress even.
Yeah.
She's not a great wrestler. I refuse to watch this match at this point. I'm not watching this. I've been through enough. There's enough left to come.
I don't blame you whatsoever.
The few seconds I caught at the beginning, at the end, Mark Madden was basically just rattling off a bunch of smarmy porn lines of stop fighting, just kiss, just like it was just gross.
And I thought Lawler was bad
No,
during the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah, I mean it was similar but just even worse.
Oh.
Yeah, so eventually I think the ending here was Miss Hancock winning and then suddenly grabbing her stomach in pain, and her boyfriend David Flair comes out, and I'm pretty sure they do a miscarriage angle, and
Yeah. It's
flat out honest. Have we ever seen a miscarriage angle that didn't just seem awful?
yeah, no, it's one of those where
Don't do it.
it's one of those things that you should not be
Or-
doing anything involved with that in wrestling.
No, it's not the right venue to tell that story. It's not going to work. Maybe
Ever.
someone like there's this immaculate actress out there that can pull this whole thing off, and there's going to be the right writer, but I don't think those stars are ever going to align.
No.
It shouldn't be done. Don't try it. Not a good idea. All right. Next up, we have the Kiss Demon versus Sting. The story behind this was the Demon was trying to get into the Dark Carnival, which was the stable of Vampiro, Muta, and the ICP.
Oh no.
Personally, not sure why you'd ever want to get in on this stable, but sure.
I mean, I guess for Muda only,
Right.
but
Match lasted less than a minute. It
I'm
was Demon comes out, Sting drops from the ceiling, which I guess we're doing that again because we had stopped out of good taste for a while. But we're back to that. Literally, it's walkout. If anyone's ever seen the infamous TNA match between Jeff Hardy and Sting, where Jeff Hardy's in no condition to be in that match had more action than this match.
how?
Demon gets whipped into the turnbuckles, face first. Sting splashes him. Demon stumbles backwards, gets hit with a scorpion death drop. 1, 2, 3, we're done.
So this was solely to get Sting onto the pay-per-view, from my understanding.
Pretty much, because Dark Carnival comes out after. Or no, sorry. There was actually more to it. The Dark Carnival had been having a big giant feud with Sting.
Yeah,
I guess.
Sure.
So the whole Dark Carnival comes out afterwards. Muta and Vampiro come out. ICP's nowhere to be found, probably for the best. So Demon's selling the Scorpion in the middle of the ring. Vampiro and Muta come out and basically try to hang Sting off the drop from the ceiling rigging.
Oh boy.
Chronic comes out and makes the save. Why?
Why Chronic of all people?
Right. So they come out and make the save and challenge the Dark Carnival of Vampiro and Muta to a match later in the night for the belts. Sure. Why not? All right. Match number 8. This was the thing I was looking most forward to by far on this card. It was Mike Awesome versus Lance Storm.
Oh.
Big Lance Storm fan. Big Lance Storm Mark was a big fan of Mike Awesome. If you heard me talking about him in our last episode, thought the guy had all the talent in the world to really go places.
Or if you guys watched the video that we posted on Facebook where it was actually part of the Mike Awesome match from last episode,
Yep.
you'll see why he's so good and why we both like him so much.
Right. So, thing to note that this pay-per-view took place in Canada. Lance Storm was in the middle of doing basically Team Canada in WCW. He was also doing a belt collector gimmick. At this point, he had the United States Championship, which he renamed to the Canadian Championship. He had the Cruiserweight belt, which also got renamed. Instead of being the X number of pounds and under belt, it was X number of kilograms or whatever belt. And he had the Hardcore belt, which was renamed to the Saskatchewan Hardcore International title, because, it anagrams to shit. Which, not wrong about their hardcore division.
Right. I mean, otherwise, the belt collector gimmick normally is a relatively cool thing.
Yeah, and it was great. Lance Storm was definitely being built strong at this point in time. So the gimmick was he brought down his own Canadian ref, and that we were going to be having this under Canadian rules. Brought down. So first off, they swerve the audience. They bring out Jacques Rougeau as the special Canadian guest referee. This was shortly after Brett had been injured by Goldberg and had his in-ring career ended, and the crowd thought he was going to bring out Brett. So that pissed off the crowd a little bit, but it's Lance Storm doing the Canadian gimmick in Canada. He couldn't be more over as a babyface.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's getting cheered like
crazy,
like the top face in the company.
Oh yeah. So the gimmick here was Mike Awesome kept beating Lance Storm clean. First he pins him, but Jacques Rougeau says, no, Canadian rules, needs to be pinned for a 5 count. Puts Lance Storm in a Dragon Sleeper, taps him out to a Dragon Sleeper. No, Canadian rules are pinfall only.
Which, spoiler to wrestling, that's not a thing.
No, not at all. So basically, we're doing super heel tactics where we keep changing the rules on the quote-unquote babyface, but who in this case was the heel, because we're in Canada and they're cheering the Canadian. The crowd's loving this whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, they're absolutely eating it up. Cool. Our guy isn't losing. Finally, Mike Awesome puts him down for a 5 count. And then they change the rules again. You need to be down for a 5 count. And then there's a 10 count. And whoever doesn't make it up is the loser. So shenanigans galore. Eventually, they both go through a table. Lance Storm makes the pin. The 10 count starts. The ref gets distracted checking on Lance Storm. Jacques Rougeau walks in and belts Mike Awesome, who just stood up and should have won. Lance Storm stands up and wins.
I feel like the direction of any of this stuff is that the company has no idea what the hell they're doing.
Exactly. You have this guy who you're trying to build up in Lance Storm, and you have him lose cleanly 3 times, making him look just incompetent in the ring, basically.
Yeah.
But you're doing it in Canada, so this super heel thing you're trying to do with him to keep the belts just as being loved by the crowd and makes him look like the greatest guy ever. Just do this anywhere but Canada.
Right. Save this angle for when they're in the U.S.
Yeah.
It would have been nuclear level heat if this was in the United States.
Been great. You would have had Lance Storm being like you could have gotten these stupid belts off of him. Have him go for the main belt. You could have made him the main heel in the company with the heat this would have gotten. But it was just awful.
Which is upsetting again because Lance Storm, Mike Awesome, should have been a fantastic match.
Exactly. All right. My next note was there was an interview with Kevin Nash afterwards, and once again using our inside baseball terms of Nash saying how he's going to go over. Yeah.
Never been a fan of Nash.
All right. So up next was our just added to the card match of Muda and Vampiro versus Chronic. At this point, fuck it, whatever. Just no one gives a shit. This whole company's in ruins. It's bad. No one cares. The Dark Carnival ends up winning after the Harris brothers come out of nowhere and costs Chronic the belt. Dark Carnival loses the belts the next nights to the Filthy Animals anyways, so fuck it. Everyone has the belts, sure. Why not?
Yay, WCW.
Who gives a fuck? Why not have them lose the belts earlier in the night? Why not have... I don't know. I don't fucking know.
I don't think anybody knows at this point what they were doing.
All right. So match number 10 was Nash versus Steiner versus Goldberg.
Ugh.
So the big thing here was we kept getting told all night that Goldberg probably wouldn't be here. He was in a motorcycle accident in Sturgis from the week before where Hog Wild, Road Wild, whatever the fuck Wild. fuck it, whatever. Goldberg's hurt. It's not going to be here. Cool. I refer to this as fuck the fourth wall match. Because they're trying to make Goldberg both a giant babyface and a heel because Nash comes out, Steiner comes out, they play Goldberg's music, no Goldberg. They play Goldberg's music, no Goldberg. Then they start saying, oh, well, Goldberg's just too good to be here. He's not going to do business.
So crowd, boo Goldberg.
Yeah, boo, no Goldberg. Except a minute and 13 seconds into the match, Goldberg runs out with a chair in his wrestling gear. So
he was there.
He was there and he just got to the arena. Dressed to go.
Did they not have the security? Is that why they didn't bring him out?
All right. Anyways, Goldberg walks out with a chair. Everyone's getting leveled with a chair. No one gives a shit. Goldberg is about to get powerbombed by Nash, and Goldberg pushes out of it and then just walks off.
He just leaves?
He just leaves. He decides he's had enough of this. Midway down the ramp, right about to hit the entrance, Vince Russo runs out, and him and Goldberg start yelling because, oh, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like, you can't talk about taking a move as part of a match and suggesting that these moves matter and hurt and are what causes someone to lose a match while talking about someone not wanting to do business and take a pinfall and the whole thing being a work. The announcer was saying he wouldn't take the power bomb. Is it a shoot or is it a work? Make up your minds. It can't be both.
Right.
You fuck WCW. All right. So final match of the evening is Jeff Jarrett versus Booker T.
Thank goodness.
Two people that can actually wrestle. Yay. However, apparently 2000's WCW is actually 1997 ECW because there's no rules to the match. You can use weapons, you can use chairs, you can use tables. There's no count out.
Oh.
Fuck it. Do whatever you want.
Sure, why not?
Oh, but there's still rope breaks.
What?
Why not? Earlier in the evening, when Booker T first got to the arena, we saw Jeff Jarrett ambush him, getting out of his car and slam his knee into the car door. His right knee into the car door. Later, Jeff Jarrett would be working over the left knee, and then working over the right knee, and then working over the left knee. Fuck continuity. Just fuck it.
It just doesn't matter at this point.
No. Then Booker just takes like 90 chair shots to the leg. But it's time for Booker to go back on a bit of offense. Fine.
No,
It's
good.
Just psychology right out the damn window. And then to cap off our evening, we talk about when the ref got hit, about the ref taking a bump.
So they talk about the ref taking a bump.
The announcers do, yes.
Oh, boy.
So, yeah, like I said, this event was 1 month. Booker T ends up winning. Whatever. It was 1 month after the infamous Hogan-Russo thing. They were banking way too hard on everything being a shoot, which is smacked of everything trying way too hard. Company was up for sale already. Within 7 months, Vince would own the damn company. This wasn't a downward spiral for WCW. It was a race to the bottom. They were... It was like they were trying to fuck off.
Like, I feel like at this point it was Vince Russo just trying to come up with as many crazy ideas as possible.
At this point, it was a Vince Russo vanity project, and fuck what made sense, fuck what was good for business. We're doing what Vince wanted. Vince McMahon would own the company within 7 months. Vince Russo was fucking off with the company currently. Fuck this pay-per-view. Fuck WCW. I'm sure I'll get back to more WCW stuff, but this one hurt. This just hurt my soul.
It kind of hurt to talk about it, too, but...
All right, moving on.
August 13th, 2005.
All right, so... to finish this one off after that horrible WCW pay-per-view.
We can't leave it on that note.
We have kind of an interesting little pay-per-view that RoH did back in 2005. It's called RoH Punk, The Final Chapter. This was essentially CM Punk's last big match as a contracted RoH talent. He had been with the company for years before that. So they wanted to do a send-off for him. So to start the pay-per-view off, I should say to start off with this pay-per-view, you have a lot of CM Punk's friends / his favorite people to working other people.
Okay, so basically kind of less a main quote-unquote plot-related thing and more kind of a send-off for Punk.
Right.
Okay.
It's essentially a big CM Punk farewell party.
Okay.
You have Nigel McGuinness beating Alex Shelley with the Embassy, Delirious and Matt Sydal with Daisy Hayes. So quite a bit of people in that.
Mm-hmm.
Nigel McGuinness, again, like we talked last week, NXT.
Current NXT announcer, former ROH talent.
Yep. Long reigning ROH champion.
Yep.
Alex Shelley, part of the Motor City Machine Guns. Delirious, Booker for ROH.
Booker for ROH, yep.
And Matt Sydal, as most people would know him in WWE as Evan Bourne. Solid match. I mean, it did what it was supposed to and put Nigel over as, at the time, being one of the best around.
So this would have been before his reigns as ROH champ, right?
Correct.
Okay.
This kind of was his climb up the match card.
Gotcha. So this was kind of a turning point in ROH because Punk had been a big part of ROH since the early days.
Yeah. Again, to tie it so that people kind of know, compared to WWE, CM Punk for ROH was Triple H and John Cena like combined into one.
Gotcha.
He was their big ticket item. He was their guy who could carry a brand on his shoulders. Granted, they had a lot of other really good people.
Right, as we'll see, they had a ton of... They weren't lacking for talent whatsoever.
Right.
But
it was just Punk was the guy.
He was the guy at this time.
Exactly. After that, you had Chad Collier versus Ace Steel with Chad going over. Honestly, I don't know who Chad Collier is. Ace Steel was in ROH for quite a bit of time.
Fair enough. Congrats to Chad.
Right. After that, you had Austin Aries beating Jimmy Rave with the Embassy with him.
So again, we've gone over who Austin Aries is. Most people, I'm assuming, into pro wrestling, listening to a pro wrestling history podcast, at least passingly familiar enough with Austin Aries, who we talked about last episode.
Yep. Austin Aries goes over. Quick match, but it was still fun. I mean, just like anything that Austin Aries does.
Yeah, it's technically really good.
Yeah. So after that, you had Samoa Joe and Jay Lethal defeating the Rottweilers, which the team consisted of Homicide and Loki, by disqualification.
So talked about Jay Lethal a little bit earlier. Samoa Joe, I don't know if we've ever really talked about yet.
We didn't talk about him too much.
So at this time, he was decently big in the TNA X division, right?
Yes.
So he was kind of making his name there mostly. Obviously, now he would go on to become a main eventer with WWE over a decade later.
The guy put in work in the indies quite a bit before jumping to WWE because he was severely loyal to TNA.
Right. He's a guy that, when motivated, one of the best workers in the business. And at this time, motivated.
He's a big guy. He can move like a cruiserweight. He does fantastic spots like a cruiserweight, but very, very technical also.
And looks legitimately like he will rip your arm off and beat you with it.
Yeah. And then on the other side, we have the Rottweilers, which is Homicide and Loki. Homicide being... He's one of those guys that is good enough to be in WWE, but they will never take him because of his personality.
Gotcha.
Loki had quite a bit of time in WWE for a short run.
Yeah, he was in like the original reality show version of NXT.
Exactly. Also real big in Impact Wrestling.
Yep.
In the X Division era, and
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's actually one of the bookers for them now.
he is.
Okay.
He is. As of right now, he's running a Agent 47 gimmick, like the character from the Hitman video games.
Oh, so just kind of like the cold assassin style.
Yeah.
No emotion, just.
Yep.
Okay.
And he even comes out in the all black suit with the red tie, and he's going for it.
Oh, okay. He's
all in on it.
all right then.
Next match was BJ Whitmer and Jimmy Jacobs beating James Gibson and Spanky to retain the RoH Tag Team Championships.
Spanky, better known as Brian Kendrick.
The Brian Kendrick.
My apologies.
Yeah,
The Brian Kendrick. James Gibson, wasn't he one of the Rock and Roll Express?
He was.
All right, so kind of more of a throwback, hey, makes the fans happy type thing than a...
Spanky needed a tag team partner, wandered around in the back looking for people, and hey, look at that, James Gibson's here.
Oh, what a shock. You want to be in the ring? Sure, all right. Fair enough. I'm sure the fans loved it.
After that was Roderick Strong beating Matt Hardy.
Hardy, in his very brief time away from WWE after the whole Lita Edge Matt incident.
Yes. So this was right after that whole backstage thing with Lita and Edge and Matt, where Lita's caught cheating on Matt with Edge. Edge and Lita then begin to date in real life.
Yep, they end up, and then Edge ends up getting nuclear heat off this, catapulting him to becoming the rated R superstar.
And being arguably one of the top heels in WWE during the time.
Yeah, definitely for the mid 2000s to early teens, definitely.
Yep. This was in August of 2005. By July of the following year, Matt was back in WWE feuding with Edge and Lita.
Yeah, he was back fairly quickly. He had a few months off there, but yeah, then he would come back and did the run out of the crowd thing, and
they brought him back.
Refused to say his name for the first week or so.
Yep. They brought him back because he went and did things like this with ROH and a bunch of other indie promotions. Vince was a little iffy on it. Sat the three of them down in a room, got their okay that they would be civil and be able to work together
that they can
and
do
all
business.
that. Right.
Like, listen, it's a shitty situation, but who wants to make some money?
Exactly. So this was a pretty solid match. I mean, obviously, anytime you have somebody the caliber of Matt Hardy in the ring,
right,
with a guy like Roderick Strong of all people,
right, who's currently making waves in NXT,
which he's one of those guys that should have been brought up to WWE or should have been pulled into WWE much sooner than he was.
Probably, but it almost works out in his favor that he wasn't, because the climate of the time wasn't right for him.
He probably wouldn't have been used the way that he should have been, but now that he's in with the quote-unquote indie darlings like Kyle O'Reilly, Adam Cole, and making the
Bobby
Undisputed.
Fish,
the fact that he's in a time where WWE is soaking up the indie darlings
and using them as people want them used.
Yeah, it works to his favor, but he should have been known more around this time than he actually was.
It's unfortunate he wasn't more known at this time, probably to his benefit that he wasn't.
Right. Finally, you have the main event of the night, which is CM Punk and Colt Cabana in a 2 out of 3 falls match. So Colt Cabana being CM Punk's best friend in real life.
Yep.
Ended up going to WWE for a very short time as something Goldstein.
Yeah, Goldman.
Yeah, it was Scotty Goldman.
Scotty Goldman, yes.
Horribly used.
Yeah,
just
terribly utilized.
Exactly like we were just talking about.
Right.
Went to WWE at the wrong time.
Right. This is prime example of not only do you need to go there, not only do you need to make it there, you need to make it there at the right time.
Exactly.
Because there's definitely the wrong time to make it there.
And Colt Cabana was part of that.
Yep.
Colt Cabana again, being one of those guys who in RoH was one of the top guys for a while. He did some really great stuff. He actually went over CM Punk in this match because due to all to Punk's credit, I'm leaving the company. Why should I go over when there's somebody who's still going to be here?
Right. No need to make me look good for the other company.
Yep.
So why do them any favors? So
Yep,
did business the right way. Punk leaving opens the door for more stars to step up in RoH, I'm assuming?
Yeah, this was about the time that Jay Lethal started to move up the card, that Colt was solidifying himself as at the top of the card, Samoa Joe moving his way up. This was honestly probably the end of ROH's heyday, but bounce back.
So it was kind of like the original blood is kind of now moving
slowly
on.
starting to move out. Punk was the first one out, and people slowly start to follow after them.
And then it would kind of force a new breed to have to pick up the...
Exactly. Think of it as the Attitude Era ending.
Gotcha.
And the shitty 2000s showing up. And
yep. And then Punk would go on to be in WCW.
A little bit after this. So he debuted in WCW in 2006.
Okay, so about a year after.
He actually had 2 more matches with ROH after this, but he wasn't contracted through them.
Okay, so he'd finish up here, go do a little bit of developmental work with WWE, and then make it to the ECW roster where,
I mean,
everyone and their uncle in the crowd wanted him going over, but for whatever reason they seemed hesitant to pull the trigger. But we'll get into Punk's future in the future.
Yeah, because he's one of the most influential people in more recent WWE times.
Yeah.
I mean, he shows up in WWE, ECW, wins the belt, gets moved on to Raw, or moves on to, Raw.
Yeah,
right
moves on
after
to
that.
Raw, ends up becoming a tag champ with Kofi.
Yep.
Then eventually gets Money in the Bank, and
everything kind of kicks off from there.
And then, indeed.
So, yeah, that was ROH Punk, the final chapter for August 13th of 2005.
All right, so that was the show for this week. If you're still listening, thank you for sitting through WCW New Blood Rising. At least you didn't have to watch it.
Fair point. Listen, we really appreciate you guys listening to us. The feedback that we got from week 1 and seeing all of the downloads and listens and everything like that, we really appreciate it. We didn't think it was going to be as quick as it was.
Yeah. It's really cool. I mean, that's all I can really say is I'm kind of speechless on it. We just wanted to do this as something to kind of occupy some time, and we thought it would be neat. And the fact that other people seem to think so too is just awesome.
Yeah. We really appreciate it. If you haven't done it yet, make sure you like our Facebook page, because you'll see lots of funny little posts and videos pertaining to the stuff that we're talking about.
Yep. Let's say we're on Spotify now. Follow us on Spotify. We're working on Google Podcasts and maybe Apple Podcasts if their tech support wants to play nice.
It'll get there sooner or later.
Yeah, we'll get there. Biggest thing you can do, like the Facebook page, subscribe to the feed on Spotify, give us feedback. We know some of the more glaring errors that we need to fix, but
yeah, tell us what you guys think. Tell us
what you like
how to
hearing,
fix it,
what you want to hear more of, what you want to hear less of, anything in particular like that.
And within the next coming weeks, we're going to start working on getting some guests in here to kind of hang out with us and talk for a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We got to get a little bit more of these under our belt first,
so that maybe someone in here that apparently doesn't have the same voice as the two of us can come in and not get confused.
Yay!
All right. So again, you can reach us on the Facebook page, This Week in Wrestling. email us, wrestlinghistorypodcast@gmail.com. Anything else to plug for this week?
Well, we should plug our other podcasting friends, Jamie.
Yes, definitely.
Jamie Engel running his
Missing the Mark.
Missing the Mark podcast. They do the stuff that we were talking about last time with the recaps and
Yeah,
things.
like if you actually want to hear something about modern events and people that are better at talking about it than we would be, listen to them.
So you'll get one side of us doing the history, them doing the most recent stuff. You'll get a.
Then what else do you need?
You'll get a
That's
full
everything.
wrestling rundown for the week.
All right, I think that's it. We're running out of things to say at this point.
Yeah, I think
right.
we're good.
We're history.